Ahoy me hearties, and welcome to another episode of Stefan Plays Pathfinder Adventure Card Game, Skull and Shackles. This week's scenario is the Black Flag, where Jirelle and Lirianne will take on the Pirate Council. This is the last scenario in the base adventure that comes in the box, and next week beginning with the adventure, the Wormwood Mutiny. The Shackles might be a ruthless land, but that doesn't mean its islands are absolutely lawless. The infamous captains of the Pirate Council control free ports on numerous islands. Their word is law throughout the Shackles, but that only matters for those who get caught. Hey folks, it's Stefan here, and welcome to another episode of the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game, Skull and Shackles. The scenario today is the Black Flag. The villain will be the Pirate Council, and the henchmen will be enemy ships. During this scenario, if you fail to defeat an enemy ship henchman, discard 1d6 cards from the Blessings deck. Reward: for each plunder card, gain another random card of that type from the box. As you remember, the Blessings deck is the timer for the game, so losing up to 6 cards from that could be dramatic, since there are only 30 cards in it to begin with. And that determines the number of turns that we'll have in order to get through this whole scenario. The 4 locations this week are Coastline, Scar Bay, Lonely Island, and Fogbank. I've already got the location decks shuffled and the opening hands have been drawn, so we simply have to place our characters at the locations that they're going to start at. We will have Jirelle start at the Coastline, and Lirianne is going to start at the Lonely Island. Coastline. At this location, if you acquire a boon with the Pirate or Swashbuckling trait, you may immediately explore again. Succeed at a Wisdom or Perception 6 check, or banish a card that has the Pirate or Swashbuckling trait to close it. And on permanently closed, each character at this location may recharge a card that has the Pirate or Swashbuckling trait from their discard pile. So we'll start the timer, get a Blessing of Milani, which is adding 2 dice to any non-combat dexterity or wisdom check, and we will encounter the first card. It's a Magic Buckler. Check to acquire, Constitution Fortitude 6. Jirelle has a Fortitude of D6 plus 2, so she can make this check, and we're not going to add any blessings to it. But she only gets a 5, so she does not acquire. Switching over to Lirianne, who is at the Lonely Island. At this location, if you are the only character at this location, add 1d4 to checks attempted at this location. When closing, banish an ally. When permanently closed, on closing, draw a random ally from the box and recharge it. So we just want one character here because we get that 1d4 to the checks. First card in the deck is Cure, which is a spell. Check to acquire Wisdom Divine 6. And she has a d12 for her Wisdom. So it's going to be d12 plus a d4 because we're at the Lonely Island. And we get a 13. So we do acquire the Cure. And the power reads: reveal this card and choose a character at your location. Shuffle 1d4 plus 1 random cards from their discard pile into their deck, and then discard this card. So we can have this card in our hand during the scenario. Lirianne is not able to have any spells in her deck at the moment, so this card can be held onto for the scenario and can be used as a scroll. Since she would need to discard in order to get down to a hand size of 4, she's going to use her Blessing of the Gods to explore again. And it is a Dragon Pistol. Check to acquire, Dexterity, Rangecraft 9. So it's just going to be a d8 plus 3. We don't want to use a Blessing on this. And we get a 7, so that gives us a 10, which means we do acquire this pistol. And we will discard it. We have to discard something. Her hand is reset. Play goes back to Jirelle, and she gets a Blessing of Savannah, which discard this card to add 2 dice to any non-combat intelligence or charisma check. She explores and finds the Pirate Council. Well, this is the villain for this scenario, so check to defeat Charisma Diplomacy 11. If undefeated, you may banish 1 plunder card per character to defeat the Pirate Council. Charisma for her is a d8, but we do have this Blessing showing up, which is discard this card to add 2 dice to any non-combat intelligence or charisma check. So we can discard a Blessing of the Gods, And now that's going to be 3d8 to get an 11. 1, 2, and 3. And we get a total of 14. So we do defeat the Pirate Council. Well, we're going to close this location automatically. There can't be any other villains in here, so we don't need to look through those. Permanently closed. On closing, each character at this location may recharge a card that has the pirate or swashbuckling trait from their discard pile. Okay, I only have Blessing of the Gods. That doesn't have that. Switch this over. Should have done the check to temporarily close before I did the encounter, actually, but Lirianne would have the option to temporarily close the Lonely Island, which requires her to banish an ally, and unfortunately she doesn't have an ally to banish, so these 3 locations will be open. The Pirate Council will escape to one of them, and we use blessings from the box to make up the other cards. So now we have 3 cards here that are going to be shuffled together, then each of these will be dropped in to a location, and then those locations will be shuffled. So we don't know where they've moved, but we do know that they're in one of these 3 now. Well, that's it for Jirelle's turn. So back to Lirianne, and she encounters an enemy ship, which is the henchman for this scenario. This is a type barrier. Check to defeat, see below. Summon and encounter a random ship. If you do not defeat the summoned ship, the enemy ship is undefeated. If the summoned ship is defeated, you may seize it. The enemy ship is also defeated, and you may immediately attempt to close the location this henchman came from. So the ships I have here in a stack, I'm just going to shuffle this stack, and then since these are 2-sided cards, I'm going to flip the stack over and take the bottom card. And that is going to be the ship that we will encounter. And it is the Wormwood. Check to defeat, Dexterity Acrobatics 9 or Wisdom Survival 7. When encountering the ship, the difficulty of the check to defeat the Wormwood is increased by twice the adventure deck number, if any. Well, we're still in the base adventure, so there isn't one. Dexterity for her is a D8. Wisdom is a D12, so D12 is probably the better check. Before we do that, though, we need to roll on the plunder table to see what plunder card will get placed with this ship. So that's a D6. And we get a 3, so that's going to be an armor. So I'll shuffle the armors deck and pull 1 armor card out. This will be the plunder card that goes along with the ship, so if we were to seize it, then, well, if we defeat it, we'll get that card. So Lirianne has a Blessing of Adjekek, which is discard this card to add 2 dice to any check to defeat a villain or henchman. So that could give her either 3d12 or 3d8 to make that check. Plus, she's at the Lonely Island, so she's still going to get that extra 1d4. So we're going to do the Wisdom check. I'm going to hold on to the Blessing of Adjekek, and I'm going to have Jirelle give Lirianne a blessing so that she will have 2d12 plus a d4 to get a 7. And just barely got it with that roll, but still we did make the check, so that is enough to seize the Wormwood. And when you seize a ship, it becomes your ship, or it replaces your ship. So our ship will go back to the box. This plunder card will get added to the plunder, and we will move our new ship into place. When commanding the ship, you may discard a card from the Blessings deck to add 1d12 to your check to defeat a Bane or a ship. So that's going to come in handy in some other checks here for henchmen. And we now have an opportunity to close the location, but again, we don't have an ally, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to close the Lonely Island. Back to Jirelle, and she needs to choose a location to go to. So she has the Fog Bank as a choice. After you play a card or use a power that examines cards in this location deck, shuffle it. To close it, you recharge your hand, which must contain at least 1 card. Or Scar Bay. All non-villain monsters gain the Undead trait and are immune to mental and poison traits. Succeed at a Wisdom or Divine 8 check. Well, that's actually going to be better for Lirianne, so we'll send Jirelle to the fog bank, and she will encounter the first card there, which is Man Overboard, a barrier. Check to defeat 7. If undefeated, display this card next to a random character. At the start of each character's turn, the character next to this card must succeed at a Constitution or Fortitude 7 check to banish this card. Otherwise, that character must bury the top card of their deck. Alright, so we definitely want to beat this. This is a Dexterity, so that's a D10 for her. So recharge the eye patch. So that is going to be a D10 and a D4 to get a 7. And unfortunately we only got a 5. If undefeated, display this card next to a random character. So to determine who the random character is, I'm going to roll a d6. On 1 through 3 it'll be Jirelle, and 4 through 6 it will be Lirianne. It goes to Jirelle, which I think is fitting since she was the one that didn't make the check. That is going to be it for Jirelle. She will reset. Back to Lirianne. This is a Blessing of Milani. Discard this card to add 2 dice to any non-combat with Dexterity or Wisdom check. Could be useful. She encounters a Noxious Bomb, which is an item. The check to acquire is Intelligence, Craft 5. But she has a D6 for Intelligence, and we're not going to spend a Blessing for this. So let's see what we get. We get a 1. Continuing my streak of getting lots of 1s. She doesn't have a way to explore again without using the Blessing of PACG, so back to Jirelle. And now Jirelle has to deal with Man Overboard, so she must make a Constitution or Fortitude 7 check. That for her would be a D6 plus 2, so she's going to spend a Blessing to make that 2d6 plus 2. And hope we roll better than our usual 1, and we do. We get a 10 total, so that is banished now. And now she will explore. And it's an enemy ship. I don't know how they have all gotten to the top, but they did. Type is barrier. Check to defeat sea below. Well, we've already read it. So we're going to summon and encounter a random ship. So same thing, we're going to shuffle this, then we'll flip it over and take the bottom card, and that will be the ship we're going to encounter. And it is the Merchantman, which was our first ship. Check to defeat Wisdom Survival 5 or Perception 7. Well, she has a survival of D8 plus 3. So we're going to go with survival. And if we take a look at the effect on the Wormwood, when you may discard a card from the Blessings deck to add 1d12 to your check to defeat a Bane or a ship. So we're going to do that. So it will be a d12 plus a d8 plus 3, which means we can't fail because we only need a 5. d12, d8 plus 3. And that comes up with 17. If defeated, when you stash a plunder card, roll on the plunder table twice and choose one of the results. So we get to choose which plunder card we want. So let's roll a d6. Let's roll 2d6 actually. So we get a 2 and a 5. The 2 is a spell. We don't want that. The 5 is an ally. We would prefer to have an ally. Draw that plunder card out. Now the Wormwood will go back to the ship deck, and the Merchantman becomes our ship. And we put this additional plunder card under there, so now we're up to 3 plunder cards. When commanding the ship, when you would roll for plunder, you may discard a card from the Blessings deck to choose the type of plunder card instead. Not quite as good of an effect as the Wormwood had. So now we have a chance to close this location because the enemy ship has been defeated. Recharge your hand, which must contain at least 1 card. So we have 4 cards, and recharging means they go into the bottom of the deck. When permanently closed, draw the same number of cards you recharged when closing. So we draw 4 cards. We get a Spyglass, a Whip, a Besmaran Priest, and a Cutlass plus 1. And this location is now closed. Now in this situation, because the villain moved, he could be in this deck. So we now need to search for the villain to see if he's in this deck. And no, he was not in this location. So that's the end of Jirelle's turn, and she resets back to Lirianne, and she will explore the Lonely Island. And she gets a Blessing of the Gods, which she acquires immediately, and that will be put into the discard pile to explore again. And it's a large chest. The check to defeat the barrier is increased by the adventure deck's number of the current scenario, if any there isn't one, so it's a strength melee 10 or a dexterity disabled 9. Well, she can't make either of those checks without a blessing. And we don't have any blessings of the gods on the table to use, so we just don't acquire anything from that, and it goes back to the box. Back to Jirelle, who now will move to Scar Bay. Scar Bay, at this location, all non-villain monsters gain the undead trait and are immune to the mental and poison traits. When closing, succeed at a Wisdom or Divine 8 check. Before closing, you are dealt combat damage equal to the number of monsters remaining in the location deck. So there are 4 monsters in the deck right now, plus a henchman, plus possibly the villain. I think that she will use the Spyglass. Discard this card to examine the top 2 cards of your location deck and put them back in any order. And we have the enemy ship and the Blood Moon Pirate. Okay, this guy, because of his power, and then because it is a blessing of the gods right now, would be a 16 for combat. And if the check to defeat has a swashbuckling trait, after you act, discard the top card of the blessings deck. So this is not a great time to encounter this guy. So I think we're going to put him back. We're just going to have to deal with taking that potential damage. So we will encounter another ship. The Dominator. Wisdom Survival 8 or Dexterity Ranged 11. When encountering this ship, if the Dominator was summoned by a card that has the Captain trait, the difficulty of your check to defeat is increased by 2, and the ship cannot be seized. Okay, so we can't seize this ship no matter what. Lirianne is going to spend her Blessing of Achekek to help Jirelle with this check. So Jirelle will be rolling 3d8 plus 3 to get an 8. So we've got plenty to defeat this. But since it says it cannot be seized, then we don't get the Plunder card, and this just goes back into the ship deck, so we'll keep the ship that we have. So we've defeated the enemy ship. We may immediately attempt to close this location, which requires us to succeed at a Wisdom or Divine 8 check, which is going to be difficult because we only have a d8 as Wisdom. And now there are no blessings on the table. But we can recharge the Besmarn Priest to add a 1d6 to a non-combat Wisdom or Charisma check. So it'll be a d8, d6 to get an 8. And we get a 5. So we do not close this location, but that's fine because that means we don't take the damage from having all those 4 monsters still in there. And we know that there's that lycanthrope right on top, so we're going to reset here. Back to Lirianne. And Lirianne encounters Treasure Hunt. The check to defeat Intelligence Knowledge 7. The difficulty to defeat this barrier is increased by the adventure deck number of the current scenario, if any. There isn't one. Each character may attempt at a check to defeat this barrier. Each character may recharge any number of allies. For each ally recharged, add 1d4 to that character's check. Each character that succeeds may add a random item from the box to their hand, then banish this barrier. She cannot make an Intelligence 7 because she only has a d6. She doesn't have a way to explore again, so she'll reset. Back to Jirelle, who is now going to encounter this lycanthrope. Blood Moon Pirate. Now this time, the blessing on the top of the discard pile is not a blessing of the gods, so he stays at a 13. But we are still going to have the other effect because everything that she uses has the swashbuckling trait. Okay, for her check, she is going to use the Cutlass plus 1. Reveal this card to use your Strength or Melee skill plus 1d6 plus 1. So that's going to be, because she has this power, for your check that has or is against a card with the Finesse trait, you gain the skill Melee Dexterity plus 2. So that makes her a d10 plus a d6 plus 3 right now. We are additionally going to recharge the Master-at-Arms, and that's going to give us a 1d6 because we are on a ship. So now we're at d10 plus 2d6 plus 3. So we're starting at a 6 to get a 13. I think we're going to use the blessing to make that 2d10 plus 2d6. Knowing how many 1s I roll, we just really need to You know, I mean, there's 2 1s right there. So it was a good choice. Got a 14 plus 3, actually. So 17 total to defeat the lycanthrope. And now she doesn't have a way to explore, so she'll have to reset. Play goes back to Lirianne, and she encounters a musket. Dexterity, ranged, craft 7. Well, we already have a musket, but we might as well try to acquire this. So that is a d8 plus 3 for her, and we won't spend a blessing on it. So that 6 plus 3 is 9, and we do acquire. She has 4 cards in her discard pile, so she's going to use this cure. Reveal this card and choose a character at your location. Shuffle 1d4 random cards from the discard pile into the deck. So 1d4, we get 4, so she's going to get the whole of her discard pile back into her deck. And that will be the end of her turn. Back to Jirelle. And it is the Dead Man's Chest. Check to defeat, Dexterity disable 11 or Strength melee 13. So that's going to be quite difficult for her. If defeated, add 1 random weapon, 1 random item, and 1 random spell from the box to your hand. If undefeated, you may banish this barrier. It's kind of cool. Check to acquire an ally or defeat a Bane or a ship. So this is a Bane. Does it have a pirate trait? It does. So it's actually 1d8. So now we're looking at d10, d8 to get an 11. So that's not too bad. I think let's do that. We'll recharge our eye patch, which so far through this playthrough really has been a very valuable card. So a d10 and a d8. And there's our friend the 1, and a total of 4, so no, we're not going to be acquiring the Dead Man's Chest, unfortunately. She will reset, and play goes back to Lirianne, and it is a magic chain shirt, which I'm sure we would like to acquire. Check to acquire Constitution Fortitude 5. Recharge this card to reduce combat damage dealt to you by 1 or 3 if the check has a swashbuckling trait. Banish this card to reduce all damage to you. If you are proficient with light armors, bury this card instead. If you are proficient with light armors, you may recharge this card when you reset your hand. Alright, so that's probably better for Jirelle, but yeah, we're definitely going to want to acquire this. So her Fortitude is a d6 plus 1. Well, we don't want to use the Blessing of Aristil, so it's just going to be a straight d6 plus 1, and I hope we're lucky. We're not, are we? No. Because we needed a 5 and we only got a 4. So Magic Chain Shirt goes away. Back to Jirelle, who encounters a Bunyip. Check to defeat combat 9. Damage dealt by the Bunyip may not be reduced. Before you act, succeed at a Wisdom 9 check, or the difficulty of your checks is increased by 1 for the rest of your turn. Well, she can't make a Wisdom 9 check, so he's going to be a 10, I guess. Well, we will use our Harpoon, because he does have the aquatic trait. So this is going to be a Dexterity or Range skill plus 1d6 plus a 1d8 plus 2. So a d10, a d8, a d6 plus 2. Are you kidding me? With the ones. So he's a 10, and we only got a 5, so we missed this by 5. We're going to have to bury our chain shirt. Banish this card to reduce all damage dealt to you to 0. If you're proficient with light armors, bury this card instead, which we are. The Bunyip is undefeated, so he goes back into the deck, and that gets shuffled. And she resets back to Lirianne. Only 2 cards left in her deck. Man overboard again. Dexterity 7 is the check to defeat. Well, we have a d8. Just a straight d8 to get a 7 is not great. I think we're going to use it this time, though. So 2d8 to get a 7. We get an 11. So we defeat Man Overboard, and she will reset. Getting down there in the blessing stack now. Back to Jirelle with a Blessing of Milani on top. So the Bunyip came back to the top. Combat 9. Well, again, he's going to be 10. This time, however, we're going to use a blessing. So we're going to use the Harpoon again. So 2d10 plus a d8 plus a d6 plus 2. Well, it looks like we got it that time. 24. Doesn't have a way to explore again, so we'll reset. Back to Lirianne. Last card in her deck. And is a Blessing of Pharasma. Intelligence, Arcane, Divine 5. Now she has a D6, we'll give it a shot. Hey, we got a 1, what a shock. So that goes back into the box. Which means, attempt to close. Unfortunately, the only way to close is to banish an ally. We'll banish the Lookout. When permanently closed on closing, draw a random ally from the box and recharge it. So I just shuffled this. Let's see what we get. Oh, just a crummy pirate. And now we've got a Blessing of Achikek on top, which is very good. So back to Jirelle. It's an eye patch. Charisma Diplomacy 5. Well, she has a D8. She gets a 6, so she does acquire that eye patch. We can discard our Boatswain to explore again. And it's the Pirate Council, which is not surprising. It had to be in this deck. Charisma Diplomacy 11. Now, in this situation, if we don't defeat him, we do actually have enough plunder cards to use his power to defeat him. But we'll try to defeat him in Charisma Diplomacy. I do wish we had a Blessing of the Gods, because we'd have that Blessing of Achikek sitting there, but we don't. So, we'll use the eye patch for sure. This gives us 1d4 to defeat a Bane or a ship, or 1d8 if it has the pirate trait, which it does. So that's 2d8 right now. Actually, I guess that's all we have, is just 2d8 to get an 11. It's not impossible. It's just unlikely with my rolls. Yep, 2d8. I didn't get it. I got a 10 instead. So we could take 1 damage and continue going through the deck, or we could use the plunder cards. You may banish 1 plunder card per character to defeat the Pirate Council. And I think we're just going to do that, because we have 3. So we do that. We defeat the Pirate Council. The location closes automatically, and Jirelle and Lirianne are victorious against the Pirate Council and the Black Flag scenario. For each plunder card, gain another random card of that type from the box. So we do have the 1 plunder card remaining. Kind of a shoddy reward for the final scenario here. Well, it's a weapon. Shuffle the weapons deck and see what the other card is. It's a short bow. Okay, that's not of interest to either of us, I don't think, because Lirianne will stick with her firearms and Jirelle is a melee. The Cat Nine Tails might be interesting, though. Strength Melee 11. For your combat check, reveal this card to use your strength or melee skill, plus 3d4. If you fail this check and you are proficient with weapons, you may discard this card to ignore the result and evade the Bane. Yeah, I think we're going to keep that. We'll have to see what we replace with it. It would probably be the whip, I would think. Yeah, and this is a basic card, so yes, we'll replace the whip with the Cat Nine Tails. Okay, well, let's have a little wrap up here. It went quite smoothly, really, mainly because the villains and henchmen tended to be on the tops of the decks, or at least close to the top of the decks, and that meant we didn't have to do full explorations to encounter them. Also, the engaging enemy ships doesn't seem to be that difficult as far as the checks go, and the Pirate Council themselves, although a Charisma 11 was difficult to roll, they weren't that much of a problem. It wasn't like some of these other villains that you face. Okay, well that is the end of the Black Flag scenario of the base adventure that comes in the box for the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game Skull and Shackles. Next week we will be moving on to the first scenario in the Wormwood Mutiny, which is the first adventure in the Skull and Shackles adventure path. One of the things that I've been thinking about doing and have been strongly considering as we move forward and the scenarios get more difficult is to add a 3rd character to the game. And the character I'm thinking about using is Olok, who is from the character add-on deck for Skull and Shackles. He's a male half-orc war priest. His main stat is Strength, which is a D12. He has proficiency with light armors, heavy armors, and weapons. His powers are, when another character attempts any check, you may display any number of blessings and weapons. For each card displayed, add 1 to the check. Return the displayed cards to your hand before you reset it. Also, instead of your first exploration on a turn, you may reveal a blessing or armor to choose a character at your location. Shuffle 1d4 plus 1 random cards from their discard pile into their deck, then discard the card you revealed. So, pretty powerful abilities there. Not totally set on this, so I take suggestions as well. Either way, if you want to leave a comment on the video, say if you're interested in Olok, or if there's some other character that you would like, either from Rise of the Rune Lords or from Skull and Shackles, and whatever seems to be the most popular character is the one that I will add. Or if there's an overwhelming majority that says, no, don't add a character, keep going with Lirianne and Jirelle, that's what we'll do. Please like the video if you enjoyed this, and consider subscribing to me so you get notification when the next video goes up. We will be continuing to do one video per week until we get through the whole of the Skull and Shackles adventure path. So thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Hey folks, just something to add on to the end here. My friend Andrew, who I play Rise of the Rune Lords with, said he was interested in knowing what the decisions were that led to the cards that are in the deck. So I was going to go over those. I started with the base decks that are recommended in the rulebook for both of these characters, and they've changed over time. So Jirelle has picked up a Harpoon, which gives you an additional 1d8 if the Bane has the aquatic trait. She is a melee character that uses a dex skill for all of her checks, and this continues to be a dexterity weapon, so that seemed like a natural fit for her. She just picked up the Cat and Nine Tails, which is replacing the Whip. The Whip is a basic card. This is an elite card, so we couldn't just add this to the deck, we'd have to acquire it. This gives us melee skill plus 3d4, and if we fail the check, we can ignore the result and evade the Bane, which is a nice addition. She's picked up a Cutlass plus 1, which replaced one of her existing cutlasses, so this is just a magic weapon, which is very important as we start to encounter undead. And then she still has one of her base cutlasses. For the most part, Jirelle's deck is what it started out as. So she has the eye patch, which you've seen and used many times. Recharge this card to add 1d4 and the swashbuckling trait to your check to acquire an ally or to defeat a Bane or a ship, or 1d8 if it has a pirate trait, it's really very useful. We've got the spyglass that lets us check out the cards to the top of the deck and put them back in any order. The Besmarn Priest, which gives us a 1d6 for non-combat wisdom or charisma and can explore location. Master at Arms, 1d4 to melee combat, or 1d6 if you're on a ship. Also can explore. The Boatswain, to just recharge this to look at the top card of your location deck, or discard him to explore. And then we've got Chain Shirt, which is our one piece of armor, and 5 Blessings of the Gods. Lirianne has been the one that's fortunate to have different blessings. She has a blessing of Air still, which is 2 dice to any combat dexterity check. Blessing of Achikek, which is 2 dice to defeat a villain or henchman. Still has 1 Blessing of the Gods, and then Blessing of Abadar, 2 dice to a check to defeat a barrier. She has picked up a musket, which is a 2-handed elite weapon, which still uses her range skill and gives 1d10. You may additionally bear this card to get another 1d10. She now has 2 dragon pistols, which are elite, and continue to use the range skill plus 1d6. You may additionally bear this card to add another 2d6, so it can be 3d6, and then you can use her power to bury something else. So it's a pretty strong weapon. And then the pistol plus 1, which is our magic weapon, so good for undead or something. She's also picked up a Tot Flask, which you'll notice is neither basic or elite, but it's not basic, so it couldn't just be added to the deck. When you would banish an item that has the alchemical or liquid trait for its power, reveal this card to bury that item instead of banishing it. So it lets you keep using potions, like the Potion of Healing. Banish this card and choose a character at your location to shuffle 1d4 random cards from their discard pile into their deck. She has changed one ally from the recommended list and put in place the Quartermaster, which is still a basic card, but recharge this card to add 1d4 to your check to acquire a boon, or 1d8 if it is a weapon, an armor, or an item, and you can use it to explore as well. The Magic Buckler replaced just a regular wooden buckler, so recharge this card to reduce combat damage dealt to you by 2. If you're proficient with light armors, you may reveal this card instead, and you may play another armor on this check. But otherwise, her deck is, well, actually you can see that Lirianne's deck has changed a fair amount already, whereas Jirelle's hasn't changed as much. Her weapons have certainly improved, and that's, I think, pretty much the goal of playing through the base scenario, the base adventure, is to improve your deck from your starting cards. But thanks for checking this out, and I will talk to you next time.